Imagine a map of California with a green line across the state that starts at the Salton Sea in the south and winds 800 miles to the north. This line runs through coastal and inland areas and marks the exact location of one of the most famous and dangerous lines in the world, the San Andreas Fault. There is a division on the Earth that has torn California in two, a real and symbolic relationship that has caused great destruction over the years. But recent findings are ringing alarm bells, a sign that something sinister is imminent. The question that worries scientists and citizens is not when the San Andreas Fault will occur, but when it will stop. Will it happen soon? Will California sink into the sea as many fear? This seismic event is almost unpredictable, leaving the U.S. government, scientists, and millions of Californians wondering when disaster will strike. As the world watches and waits, scientists race against time to find answers before it's too late. What are the symptoms of the San Andreas Fault? Is it possible to always give away things that we haven't seen yet? Join us as we explore the dire warnings and cautions surrounding the San Andreas Fault, what it means for California, and the global consequences of such a catastrophic event. The San Andreas Fault is a name that sends shivers down the spines of those who know it, especially the millions who live in California. Mentioning this fault conjures up thoughts of devastating earthquakes and massive destruction. It's more than just a crack in the Earth's surface, it's a time bomb error that has wreaked havoc throughout history and threatens to do it again, only worse. Stretching for over 800 miles from the northern end of the Gulf of California through the western part of the state and reaching the Pacific Ocean in the San Francisco region, this fault cuts a swath through the heart of California. But what makes the San Andreas Fault even more feared is the constant tectonic activity detected around its base. The Earth moves beneath the feet of Californians, often leading to tremors and small earthquakes, all signs of the ever-looming threat. A tragic reminder of the San Andreas Fault's destructive power can be found in the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, a disaster that left the city in ruins and claimed countless lives. And yet, while the 1906 earthquake is still remembered as one of the most catastrophic in American history, the terrifying reality is that it could pale in comparison to what may come next. Another example occurred in 1989, when a smaller earthquake followed a larger earthquake 5 years later in downtown Los Angeles. These events are warnings and reminders of the problem that exists underground. The most troubling thing is that in most of these cases the San Andreas Fault did not move directly into the affected cities, but the damage was still severe. For local communities that are directly on the fault line, the risk is greater and they will not be more resilient. From Point Reyes Station to San Bernardino, from Palmdale to Bodega Bay, these backwater towns are vulnerable and helpless in the face of the worst disaster California has ever seen. The recent announcement by Thomas Jordan, director of the Southern California Earthquake Center, has more than enough concern for Californians. His warning that the San Andreas Fault was in dire straits, closed, loaded and ready to go, sent shockwaves across the state. Fearing that the fault will rupture at any time, everyone has the same question: when is the next big earthquake going to happen and how bad will it be? Experts have warned for years that the southern part of the San Andreas Fault is vulnerable. This section has not been seriously damaged since 1857, when a magnitude 7.9 earthquake struck 185 miles between Monterey County and the San Gabriel Mountains near Los Angeles. This event, known as the Fort Tejon earthquake, caused significant damage. But that was more than 150 years ago, and since then the fault has been quiet. According to Jordan, the reservoirs in the San Andreas system are complex, chronically stressed, and caused by large earthquakes. The announcement, which was made at the Binational Convention in Long Beach, had everyone watching. Although Californians have long known that they are on the wrong side of a line, this latest warning has raised their fears to an unprecedented level. The real concern is the knowledge that no one knows for sure when the fault will break. It could happen tomorrow or in 10 years. But when it happens, the consequences are dire. The San Andreas Fault has long been a concern for Californians, and for good reason. This fault marks the boundary between two major tectonic plates, the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate. As the Pacific Plate moves toward the northwest, the stress along the fault is greater than that of the North American Plate. In theory, this movement should decrease about 16 feet of pressure every 100 years. But unfortunately, stress has been around for more than a century, with no significant health benefits. Although the southern part of the San Andreas Fault has received a lot of attention, it is not the only area prone to major earthquakes. San Bernardino County, which sits on the southeast side of Cajun Pass, hasn't seen much movement since the 1812 earthquake. Of stress is of great concern to experts. Jordan has asked the state of California to focus on preparing for a magnitude 8 earthquake. An earthquake of this magnitude would cause great damage, not only in the immediate area, but throughout the state. While Los Angeles has been able to renovate buildings and strengthen infrastructure, many other communities have not been as prepared. Jordan praised Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti for his efforts to require earthquake repairs to residential buildings and concrete structures, but warned that more is needed. Despite these efforts, California is still unprepared for the inevitable. The San Andreas Fault is about to rupture, and when it does, the state faces one of the worst disasters in its history. A new report from the U.S. Geological Survey, USGS, shows how dire things can be if a major earthquake occurs on the San Andreas Fault. A magnitude 7.8 earthquake on the southern side of the fault would cause 50,000 injuries, $200 billion in damage and long-term disruptions to daily life. The tremor lasted about 2 minutes, with the strongest shaking in areas such as the Coachella Valley, Inland Empire and Antelope Valley. But the destruction doesn't stop here. This earthquake will cause secondary effects that will make recovery more difficult. Strong shaking occurs in areas that trap sediment from earthquake waves, such as the San Gabriel Valley and East Los Angeles. In addition, critical infrastructure can be wiped out, water systems, power lines and communications networks can all be offline for months. The collapse of the sewage systems alone left the entire area without access to basic sanitation for 6 months, creating a secondary crisis after the earthquake. Then there are the human costs. The USGS estimates that an earthquake of this magnitude could kill 1,500 people, a staggering toll across the state and beyond. The truth is simple: California is facing a disaster that could change the state in ways we can't even imagine. To get an idea of the damage caused by the San Andreas Fault, look at the Fort Tejon earthquake of 1857. The earthquake, estimated at 7.9 on the Richter scale, was able to participate in it. History is one of the worst earthquakes in the United States. The earthquake, which started in northern Monterey County, traveled south from Fort Tejon to Cajun Pass in San Bernardino County. The tremors lasted up to 3 minutes in some areas, making it a scary number for those stuck on the road. The earthquake in 1857 was so powerful that it melted water, a phenomenon that made the land look like water, uprooted trees, and destroyed buildings as far away as Stockton. Although the San Andreas Fault runs directly through Los Angeles, the city was spared the worst of the tremors because it is 30 miles from the center of the city. But this distance does not mean that Los Angeles is safe. It's far away. The city's proximity to a fault system leaves it vulnerable to major earthquakes, and the damage is high. In an attempt to prepare for the worst, Thomas Jordan and his team conducted a simulated 7.8 magnitude earthquake on the San Andreas Fault. These simulations start at the southern end of the fault, where most of the stress has accumulated, and follow the earthquake's negative path as it moves northward across the state. The worst shaking will be in the Coachella Valley, an area known for its vulnerability to earthquakes. From there, the quake spread in all directions, ripping through the Los Angeles Valley and beyond.